Hey everybody, this is the Sliders Review, and I'm here today to talk to you about Pleasantville, the 1998 cult classic movie. This movie is something very different and very fascinating, and it's a movie unlike most people have ever seen before. The movie was a financial flop at the box office, but it was a critical acclaim movie, winning or actually being nominated for several awards and winning several awards and stuff. It's one of those types of movies you just gotta experience for yourself, you know what I'm saying? And I remember I watched this years ago, not in the theaters, but on TV. And I got halfway in the movie, that's when I started, because I never really saw the beginning. And I was just so mesmerized by the movie and the meaning and the fact that it's black and white. And every once in a while, you'll start to see color emerge through that of emotion and stuff. This movie is a metaphor for so many different things: oppression, racism, the political climate and stuff like that. And you gotta remember, this was made back in 1998. If it was made today, oh, there would be tons and tons and tons of people on YouTube complaining that this movie is woke, that this movie hates white people, and all kind of stuff, all because they feel what is known as white guilt. And back in the day, not one person complained about the messaging of this movie. But like I told you before, if it was made today, they will be having a different tune because more people all about grifting on YouTube and getting that YouTube money and being angry for the sake of just being angry. This movie was something truly special in terms of Hollywood and how they make movies. This was filmed, like I said before, in 1998. They were still using old school film to make this movie. It was not digital, but this is the first movie to ever film an actual real film and scan it in a computer so that they could digitally manipulate certain things, because the movie is primarily in black and white, but they filmed it in color instead of filming it in black and white because they needed certain colors to start popping out at certain different like parts of the movie and stuff. And it was a pain in the butt for them to make. It took hours and hours and lots and lots and lots of probably like coffee breaks at night because of all the CGI that, they had to do for the color scenes and stuff. It was quite fascinating to see how exactly they made this movie in certain times, because I remember I'm thinking to myself, oh, okay, well, like the scene where Tobey Maguire's putting makeup on his mom because she is now in full color and she wants to hide her appearance so she won't be ostracized and everything. He starts applying makeup on her to turn her back into like gray, black, and white. And I assume, they just, use gray paint to paint on her face, but no. As it was filmed in color, there's a behind the scene thing where they actually used this type of green paint to paint over her skin. And whatever this type of paint is not your typical makeup type application. They had to get it to and mix it with stuff to make it look like actual makeup. When you apply it on your face, it has that certain sheen to it and stuff. They had to figure out a way to make it do that. And so they just applied like this green makeup on her face. To one point, she was literally green in the movie and stuff. And then they had to like film it, then they had to like scan it, and then they had to make it like in black and white and do all this other stuff, and then apply this other type of green paint to make it look like what is it like, because there's a scene where she takes the green paint off and and it's revealing her flesh tone skin, and they once again had to use this weird type of green paint to make it look like makeup and stuff. It is quite fascinating because nowadays everything's filmed digitally and they could just easily manipulate through a computer just to make you like black and white or add color to you. But this was back in like those Jurassic Park type days where things were a little bit more complicated and stuff. Now, this movie was produced, written, and directed by that of Gary Ross. That man was doing triple time on this movie and stuff. And is the movie perfect? No. But it's extremely good. Like when I say it's not perfect, only because this was made in the late 90s. So you know how they used to speed through things, and the pacing is a bit fast. And it would be nice to give you time to settle in, take everything in, analyze it for yourself, but it moves at a very fast pace. Because, when you first watch this movie, like if you didn't see the trailer, you would assume that this is just a typical teen comedy from the late 90s and stuff. It has that certain vibe to it that a lot of movies were coming out around that time, and so when you're watching it, you're like, okay, it's like a teen movie and everything, right? So you get this sense of like, like security and everything. Then all of a sudden, only about 5 to 10 minutes in, all of a sudden, the two teenagers are transported to a 1950s type of world in black and white. And so now it's kind of like a Back to the Future moment where everything looks and feels totally different. It no longer feels like a late 90s comedy teen movie. Now it just feels like a typical 1950s sitcom. It has, like, and when I say the vibe, it's like this type of aura around the movie where it's like something in the atmosphere, it's something in the tone, there's something in the sound of the movie that makes you really feel like you're back in the old days. And it stays that way throughout the remainder of the movie till you get to the very end and it's back in the real world days in the 1990s and stuff. And, that's the thing that really captivated me when watching this movie was that 1950s setting. I was never around in the 1950s, and thank God for that, because I'm black. But it is fascinating to watch movies like Back to the Future and experience what life was like back then. It was really simpler times and low grade tech. Like, there were milkmans that delivered milk and they were delivering little glass jars. And you stop and you think to yourself, now I have a big gallon of milk and it can last me for about, 2 weeks or so before it starts to expire. How do these people survive on these little jars? But of course, they have multiple jars. There were like, newspaper delivery boys and stuff like that riding their bikes. You go to the barber shop and there's somebody buffing your shoes as you're getting your hair cut and everything. And it was just like there was no cell phones, there were no computers, no tablets, no apps, and old school cars and signs and this and that. And it is really fun when you go back to these period pieces and stuff. Because the thing is, they didn't travel back in time. They're actually in some type of weird alternate reality that for some reason has resembled 1950s television. And it reminds me a little bit of this, Justice League cartoon episode. Because like I said before, they do rush through things pretty fast. Because once you get about 20 minutes into the movie, this is when all the stuff starts altering the universe and color starts to appear. And with this movie, they don't explain nothing to you. You have to take it in for yourself and figure it out. It's the whole show, don't tell, which is something you're supposed to do in Hollywood. But every once in a while, it would be nice to explain certain little details. You know what I'm saying? Like, are they in the actual TV episode or are they in the alternate reality? And you have to get through the end of the movie to figure that out. And so it would be nice if they explain a couple of little things. Because like in that Justice League cartoon, Basically, certain members of the Justice League got transported to an alternate world. This alternate world resembled that of a comic book that Green Lantern used to read as a kid. It turns out that somebody in Green Lantern's the real world universe has some type of telepathy that can look into this alternate world, see how things were, and duplicate it in a comic book. So it would be nice if they would explain something like that. But they don't. And so also there are certain little things that are just kind of odd in the movie, like the personality of the two twins from the real world. And when they get teleported in this alternate reality, it's kind of like we don't get to know them very well in the beginning of the first 5 minutes, but we get enough to give you the gist of who they are. So then when they are in this alternate world, we do start to see the rebellious side of, say, the teen girl and everything, but you don't really get to see the amaze and wonderment of the boy who loves old school 1950 television and stuff. Also, it's kind of like when you watching this movie, it's kind of like, okay, it's one of those movies that's supposed to teach you a life lesson, because in the second part of this movie, for the extra hour, there's a huge twist that nobody saw coming. And with that twist, it's kind of like, okay, this alternate world is learning a life lesson, much like our world had to learn. But what life lesson are the two teens learning? Because you don't really know, because you don't really know them all that well. And when it comes to the boy, his personality isn't really fleshed out that well. But then when you get towards the very end of the movie, then things start to kind of click a little bit. Kind of like, okay, I see what it is. You have this nerdy teenage boy who can't get a girlfriend. He's too shy to talk to girls. His mom is neglectful and everything. His sister picks on him constantly, who happens to be his twin, and he used escapism through that of 1950 television. So he's in this own little bubble world, and he's too afraid to be risky. He's too afraid to stand up for himself. He's too afraid to take the initiative. But then when he's in this alternate world, he starts to do that. It's one of those things you really have to pay close attention to. But then when it comes to the teen girl, it's a little bit more confusing. She's popular in the real world. She's also dumb. And she also loves dating boys and be promiscuous and smokes and stuff like that. But then when she's in this alternate world, it's like certain things are happening with her, and it's kind of like, well, why? Why exactly is she all of a sudden studying? Why all of a sudden is she worrying about grades and this and that? Why all of a sudden she wants to remain in that world just so she can go to college, even though she says, she never had a chance of going to college in the real world, and here she does. But then it's kind of like, we never really got to see that with her all throughout the movie, so it's a little odd in everything. And it's even to the point where she starts rejecting the guy, which she is very guy crazy. But what is making her exactly do that? So her character really need to be fleshed out a bit more as to explain why she had this revelation towards the end of the movie. But then again, like I said before, this whole movie is a metaphor for stuff. These people are repressed because they live in a very stylized type world. It's even to the point where they don't know what goes beyond that city and everything, because they've never traveled beyond that city, because in a 1950s setting television show, they only remain in that city or that state. And so they have no idea what's beyond that, and they're too afraid to go. And not only that, but just like in old 1950 television, when it's breakfast time, there's a feast on the table for some bizarre reason. And everybody's really good at sports, and everybody's really good at driving, and everybody's really good at playing sports and dancing and stuff like that. And so it is kind of jarring to the two real life teenagers when they're in this world, because everything is so perfect. And that is how 1950s and 60s, or at least 1950 television was. It was this fake perception of what the real world was like. In those shows, you never saw the fire department put out a fire. They would instead rescue like a kitten out of a tree. So when a fire does happen, they have no idea what to do. The parents sleep in separate beds and everything, yet they love each other. The wife is a stay-home mom who just slaves away in the kitchen and doesn't do anything for herself, while the husband just goes to work. People could literally walk outside at night and won't be harmed. And not only that, but people order the same type of food over and over and over again. They had these morals of, oh, you shouldn't be making out with nobody. You should only wait to have sex when you're married and stuff like that. And they don't even know what rain is because, back in those days, you never really saw it rain in a television show. So it's like TV had a way of brainwashing people back in the day of saying, hey, this is what the perfect world looked like, even though the real world is not like that. And this is your escapism. But then when the teens come there and they start to change the status quo and everything, odd phenomenons start to happen and stuff. Like it starts to rain all of a sudden. There's a fire. And then color starts to emerge because these people are experiencing emotions that they've never experienced before. They are now experiencing life and everything. And to some of them, it's very joyful. And like the teens, they're loving it. And you know how teens are. They're always the first ones to gravitate towards something and make it a cultural phenomenon. The adults are slowly starting to come around. But then there are some adults who do not like that. Just like in the real world, they are afraid of change. And it's quite fascinating to see all this stuff emerge. When people start to experience emotion and you see little minute colors start to appear here and there as the emotions are getting stronger, as they're experiencing more life and enjoying themselves, the more color starts to emerge in this universe. And even like books, like they're completely blank pages like they were in television shows back then. But then they only start to have words and pictures once the real life kids start to tell them what these books are about because they have no idea what goes beyond that of the cover. And it's kind of weird how television used to manipulate people like that, very much like how the government in some countries manipulate people and stuff. And, then when you get to the twist towards the second part of the movie, then it's kind of like, holy crap, now I see things full circle and everything. Because like I said before, this is a metaphor for racism and stuff. So before I get into the second part of what the movie's about, let me get into some of these celebs that are in this movie. Oh man, there's at least 3 celebrities that have died in this movie and one camera operator dude. So, it's really, really, really sad. So first, let me just start by saying it's interesting when it comes to this movie because there was a contest that was given out where 30,000 people wanted to they submitted a chance to go to Pleasantville, Iowa and everything. And I think what it was is this person was selected anonymously and rejected a trip and decided, hey, I just want the $10,000 instead. I mean, can you blame them? Do you gotta take a trip to a town you could care less about, or did you take the money? Now, sadly, Brent Hirschman was a cameraman and he died because he worked several hours a day and he was so tired at night that he got into an accident. And this is something that has happened like a couple of times in Hollywood and has almost happened. It almost happened to KJ Alpa from that Riverdale who played Archie. He worked several hours a day. He drove at night and nearly fell asleep at the wheel. Hollywood really needs to stop doing this. So, like I think like a petition or something like that was like made out, and so to make like Hollywood people to stop working so many hours on that movie. But as we all know, they still work demanding hours. Like Marvel pushes their VFF team like to the brink of like insanity and stuff. And it's so sad. Like I get it. A movie has to be made in a certain amount of time before it can get pushed out. But they're really screwing up the mental stress of these people and stuff. And you shouldn't have to work 19 hours a day, then hop on the road to go to sleep at night just to sleep for about 4 hours and then hop back up around like 6 in the morning just to do it all over again. Don Knotts plays the repairman, the TV repairman. Boy, may he rest in peace. Oh my God, Don Knotts, man. Like Barney Fife from the Andy Griffin Show. Dude has done stuff with Scooby-Doo as well. The man is a legend and everything. It was so cool to rewatch this movie because it's on YouTube right now, on the YouTube movie free page, whatever they call it. And I was surprised because it's been there for 2 years, but I'm just now figuring this out. And so like, man, oh my God, dude, it was so good to see him again and everything, like doing what he does best, being funny. All the scenes with him are hilarious. The man does not miss a beat. His character is very interesting because when he shows up, see, the twins, they fought over the remote and broke it. And so, like, he shows up out of nowhere with a brand new remote control, but it looks very old school, 1950s and stuff, kind of sci-fi looking. And he said he's been looking for the two perfect people and everything and stuff like that, but he could never find the right people until he found these two twins. So when they fight over the remote control, one of them hits a button and they get sucked into the TV. And he tells them he's been looking for somebody who knows everything about the television show Pleasantville, which is the alternate reality in which they get sucked into. Because he said some people know too little, some people know too much, and all this other stuff. And so then they start to bicker at him because they want to go home, and he just gets like upset, and he's always arguing with them. You never really know his true motive in everything because it's never once explained. You have to use your brain to think outside the box. This movie constantly makes you think outside the box because he's been desperately looking for somebody to go to this world. But then when he starts to see everything change, he gets upset and is like, oh, it's time for you to leave and everything. But then the teens don't want to leave. Then at the end of the movie, when the world starts to become more like the real world and everything, he's happy and stuff and smiling because this was his motive all along. But you never really understand that because of how like his moods changed all throughout the movie. Tobey Maguire, Spider-Man himself, plays David in the real world, but Bud in the TV world. And it's weird after seeing this movie, after seeing him play Spider-Man. The man acts exactly the same as he always does when he's Spider-Man. Like I just kept seeing Spider-Man in this. And it's a shame that Hollywood doesn't really cast him no more. Like he's really good at playing that dopey kind of like smiley character, but I think he's supposed to be in Marvel's Secret Wars, I believe, as Spider-Man. I hope so. And so, like, his character is very shy, very nervous in the real world. He cannot talk to girls to save his life. And, he has a mom that doesn't really pay too much attention to him. He has a sister who picks on him and stuff. And he has this other nerdy friend, and they love watching marathons, and they love watching old classic television. And there's a marathon on TV of Pleasantville. This was a time before DVDs, box sets really took over. This was a time before streaming, before the internet was the internet. So the only way to watch like a marathon, you had to watch it on TV. But his sister does not want to do that because she has a date and they want to watch something else. When he is teleported to this like alternate reality and everything, he's just kind of almost a little happy and kind of disturbed in the same way, but then he's mostly fascinated, especially when he plays basketball and he starts to see everybody making like a perfect shot. And since he knows everything that's supposed to happen in the show, when things start to act differently, like, Skip is supposed to ask his sister out. And he's all like, I don't know if she really be into you and stuff like that, which causes Skip to have an emotional reaction and causes Skip to miss a shot in the basketball. And it's so hilarious because when the basketball misses and it's rolling on the floor, the other players and the coach is like, don't touch it. They think it's like disease or something like that. But this is what the first incident that happened that changed this world was him upsetting Skip and causing him to miss that perfect shot. And it's very minute. Like he doesn't even realize he's changing the status quo of like this universe and stuff until he starts to. And once he realizes he starts to do it and his sister does, then all of a sudden he's okay with it because he is starting to really enjoy himself. He's in a world where a girl actually likes him. This one girl, played by Marley Shelton and everything, Margaret, she's supposed to like a guy named Whitey and everything. Yeah, the name Whitey. Yeah, and he is an antagonist in the movie too. Like I said, man, this was woke before woke was even a thing. And so he's thrilled. Like this hot girl likes him and everything. He plays basketball. He's on a basketball team. He's a perfect straight A student in this world. Like he's just living it up, you know what I'm saying? And doesn't want to return back to that of the real world. And he starts to infuse more emotion into the teens when he sees them rebelling and trying to figure out what all this color stuff is. He's explaining what books are to them. He's explaining what rain is. He explains and becomes a hero because he puts out a fire. And he puts it out because the fire department has no idea how to use the water hoses and stuff. Because all they do is rescue cats out of trees and stuff. He even stands up to a bully that tries to attack his mom and stuff. And he causes this one person, his boss at the ice cream shop, to break the rules and experience color and experience free range of emotion and stuff. And, but he does return at the end of the movie because he just wants to go back home. Reese Witherspoon plays Jennifer / Mary Sue. And so, man, I swear, she plays these type of roles a lot. Like, it's weird, man. Like, I just love this actress so much and stuff. She has that vibe to her. But she always plays these mean type roles. And so she plays the mean twin sister. And her character isn't very good at school, but she loves boys to death. And so, like, the thing when she comes to this world, she's not happy at all. But all of a sudden, like, she just starts to fall for this guy named Skip because Skip likes her and she's just super, super, super horny. When they go to make out lane, he has no idea what to do other than just kiss. And, well, she pops his cherry, let's just say that, and teaches him a few things to the point where it corrupts the other teenagers there where they start doing the same thing, which is a hilarious scene when they just go by car and people's legs are just up in the air stuff. And so she loves taunting her brother because he doesn't want to change things in this world, but he doesn't realize he's changing them himself, and he started changing it first. So when she starts to change it, she rubs it in his face with spite and everything. Now, it is kind of odd because halfway throughout, like, the movie, She no longer is interested in boys and more interested in school. This is never really truly explained until you get to the end when she decides she's gonna stay in that fictional world because she says she has a better chance of like going to college than she ever did in the real world and stuff. I wish they could have flushed this character out a bit more, to like get a better understanding and stuff. Joan Allen plays the mother. And so she's your typical suburban housewife, always stays stuck in the kitchen, cooks tons of food, cleans the house. But then once she starts to see color for like the real first time, she starts to want to break out of that role. She has needs and urges she doesn't really know how to feel. When she talks to that of Jennifer, Jennifer tells her, like she asks her, what do you do at Makeout Lane? And she's all like, do you really want to have the talk? And so Jennifer tells her, there's a way you can do what I did with my boyfriend without having an actual boyfriend if dad won't do it for you. So she teaches her mom how to double click her mouse. Becomes one of the most hilarious scenes in the entirety of the movie. She's in the tub and she's clicking it. And she's starting to experience so much emotion that colors are just coming out of everywhere in the bathroom. But the craziest thing that happens is she literally has the big O. It's such a huge explosion, it causes the tree outside the house to catch on fire. When I say this movie got metaphor after metaphor, boy, I am not joking. So the fire department has to take it, put out the fire, but they don't know how. So Tobey Maguire's character ends up putting out the fire. Because of this, her husband doesn't want to share the same sentiment. So she starts to be promiscuous and step out. She finds that Bud's, Tobey Maguire's, boss, and they have an affair to where she spends the entire night with him and stuff. And it's to the point where she no longer is making food and she's no longer cleaning the kitchen, the house, and all this other stuff. She is literally the emphasis of what happened during the Second World War, in which women had to go into the workforce. And when they got out of the workforce, when the war was over, they didn't want to go back into the kitchen and stuff. It's a very interesting epiphany she is having and stuff. And sadly, she had to cheat in order to experience it because her husband wants to stay the status quo and everything. William H. Macy, of course, plays that of her husband. And he's a really nice guy. But it's really funny when all of a sudden his wife is no longer cooking food for him and he has no idea what to do. He doesn't know how to use the stove. He looks into the refrigerator and there's barely anything there. He doesn't realize why his house isn't getting cleaned and stuff. This is a huge blow for him. And I do wonder what happened to men in the real world when this started to happen around like the late 60s and the early 70s and 80s and stuff. Because, times were changing. They no longer were in control and stuff. And that's a very important thing to remember, that the white man was no longer in control around that time in history. And just like it is in the movie, because in the movie they start to act out similar to how men reacted in the real world and stuff when things are different. But for the most part, he still remains that of a nice guy. Towards the end of the movie, when everybody's in color, him and his wife are going to work on their marriage and don't know what the future holds for them. Bill is played by Jeff Daniels, and he plays that of Bud's boss. And so he is used to, things being a certain way. Like when he goes to his job, Bud lays out the burgers for him. He cooks the burgers, things this and that. When Bud doesn't do all that, he doesn't know what to do because he's never been told what to do. So Bud literally tells him, if I'm not here, you can do it yourself. This causes him to experience real thought for like the first time and is able to navigate through life on his own without, having things prepared for him. This causes him to want to start painting and see colors. He loves paintings and stuff. When Bud shows him a book that has real color in it, he cannot believe his eyes and he just starts painting and painting. Some of these paintings are a little erotic because, they're new paintings and stuff, which causes his curiosity to paint more. He falls for that of Bud's mom. And so him and Betty start to have an affair. And he even starts to paint her, and he starts to paint murals all over his place of establishment. The teens are loving it, but some of the older people are not. And so this causes them to act out and everything. Bill is that type of person to where he doesn't have courage and stuff. And so when things start to get a little bit rough, when he's in the courtroom, he is scared of going to jail for the rest of his life. And he starts to tell, the judge / mayor, I will obey and do whatever you want. Now, after all this happens and the whole world is now colorful and everything, and I literally mean the whole world is colorful, him and Betty no longer, well, I don't know if they continue their relationship or not. It's kind of weird. She's at a bench with her husband and he's all like, I don't know what the future holds, and stuff like that. Then she turns around and then all of a sudden it's Bill. I don't understand that part of the movie. Now, Skip is played by Paul Walker. Oh my God, dude, his death was tragic in real life. May this dude rest in peace. He's best known for the Fast and Furious movies, and he died in a car crash and was burnt alive. That was just tragic, man. And so he plays Skip. He's one of those perfect type dudes, nice hair, nice smile on the basketball team, has the girl and everything. But of course, he's the first person to experience emotion when he misses the basketball net because he thinks that Mary Sue, aka Jennifer, doesn't want him. She is the one who teaches him all about clickety clacking it. And it's to the point where he wants it. He's been getting it every night for the same time and he's loving it until she doesn't want to give it to him no more because she wants to study and everything. This causes him to act out a little bit. And when the whole second half of the movie happens with the mob, he is a part of it because he's just following his type and everything. But then he comes around and starts experiencing color like everybody else. Margaret is played by Marley Shelton. I love seeing her in roles and stuff. It's a very small, brief role where she's supposed to fall in love with a guy named Whitey and bake him cookies, but instead does it to Bud. And she starts to fall for Bud and everything. And when she starts to see color for the first time, she's very frightened by it, but she's more frightened by that of rain. And of course, Tobey Maguire's character helped her adjust and everything. There are two other stars in this movie that have brief roles. One, I forget his name, but he was on Buffy, and in Clueless, he played the nerdy guy. And then the other one played Buffy's military boyfriend in season 4. The nerdy guy has like one small line, but the military boyfriend dude, he has no lines whatsoever. I am very shocked and surprised by that because he was on Buffy and stuff. Jake T. Walsh, may he rest in peace. He died, I think, before the movie came out or after the movie came out in '98. And he plays Big Bob. Big Bob is the mayor. He is prominent during the second half of this movie because he doesn't like change. He likes for things to stay the same. He likes for things to stay pleasant. He likes for things to stay in a non-colored kind of way, if you get my drift. This is the second part of the movie that takes an unexpected turn and with a huge, huge twist. See, it isn't just objects that are turning into color, it is people as well. Small little traces here and there, and some people are in full color. The more emotion they experience, the more free will, then the more they become colorful and stuff. And this is starting to frighten certain people in town. As always, it is white men. It's always them. The second half of this movie is a huge metaphor for racism and civil rights advocacy and stuff. I did not see this coming because of the simple fact is like, okay, now I've told you this before. I'm a black dude, right? And when I was rewatching this movie for the second time, I noticed something. I noticed that in the TV world, there are no people of color whatsoever. There are no blacks, no Hispanics, no Asians, no Native Americans, no nothing. It is all white. And so once you get to the second half of the movie and you start to see what happens, I'll tell you this right here, right now. I am 100% okay with there being no people of color in this fictional televised world. Because of the simple fact it is supposed to depict what television looked like in the 1950s and stuff. And you did not see too many people of color on television. And I am okay with the people of color being erased in the entirety of this movie because the white people who start to turn colorful are the representation of people of color. You gotta think outside the box, and that is why the writing is very smart, because you start to see signs that say no colored people and stuff. You start to see mobs of angry white men starting to break things that are color. Like when the one ice cream shop dude starts to paint a mural in his shop because he loves color and stuff so much, they start to break up his shop and just tear it apart. This is very much what happened during the civil rights movement and stuff. White people did not want black people to start having more rights and everything. They did not want them to start using their bathrooms, their water fountains, their pools and stuff. This is a huge metaphoric representation of that. And the only tiny problem I do have with the erasure of people of color is that when you are in the real world for the first couple of minutes of this movie, I don't think there are no people of color whatsoever as well. And that kind of bugs me right there because there should have been some because it's the 90s. But in this fictionalized world, like I said before, I am totally okay with it. It is interesting and appalling to see these group of white men get so angry at white people turning into color. Now, like I said before, when they turn into color, not people of color, just color, like the flesh tone color of white people and stuff. Their hair being blonde, brown, blue eyes, stuff like that, that offends them and everything because they're no longer seeing themselves in everybody else. And we all know, thanks to like all these toxic like white YouTube guys and everything, when they start to see things in movie and television things that are not like them, they get outraged and they complain about it and make hundreds and hundreds of videos and stuff. When they like the whole wokeness area, they hate that and stuff because they're starting to see people of color in television, movies, and video games, and etc. And people again gender bent and race bent, and people are turning to LGBT characters and stuff. This is blowing their minds because they are no longer in control, and that is what is happening in this movie. They are no longer in control. Everything is different. They're listening to music that is different than what they're used to listening to, and they do not like it. It's even to the point where Bud's mom is all colorful and she's wearing a blue dress, and a group of like teenage white boys, because now it's reached the teenagers and now it's reached the white women. They are so angry that a group of teenage boys were about to attack his mom, to where Bud stands up to somebody for the first time and knocks him out so hard that the guy, who is still in black and white, is bleeding red. He is now perplexed and don't know what to do because now he is turning colorful and stuff because of the emotion he's feeling from getting punched in the face. And so, like, this starts an uproar with the older men in town and with that of the mayor. It's to the point where Bud and his boss decide they're gonna paint the most colorful mural ever and break all the rules because they will not have a curfew. Because there were tons of rules put in place after all this happened. And they were no longer gonna live in oppression and stuff, which causes Bud and his boss to get arrested and go to court. And the court system, as you all know, is rigged for white men to get away with crimes. That's how it was back in the day. Because if you was a person of, I'm talking about our world now, if you was a person of color and you witnessed a crime or something like that happen and you could not testify against a white man, they literally got away with everything. That's how the justice system was back in the day and stuff, for like hundreds and hundreds of years. And that's how it is in this movie, where Bud doesn't even have a lawyer, and the judges are like, oh, you don't need a lawyer, son, and everything, meaning this is going to be a quick case where Bud is going to lose. It scares that of the ice cream shop owner to where he's all like, look, man, I'll color whatever you want and whatever colors you want. Or, I mean, I'll paint whatever colors you want. If you want to be black and white, I'll do it. But then that's when Bud tells him, oh, man, we ain't going back to the old days and everything. Things are changing. He gives an inspirational speech that causes everybody in the courtroom to turn color, even the mayor. And he's so scared by this, he runs out. This is one of the most ingenious things I had ever seen. This was back in 1998. And I remember recently, just now, I read an article just a few years ago, probably back in 2020, where there's this one black author. She is pissed about this movie. She's pissed because of the erasure of people of color, especially that of black people. She said things like she is shocked that there are no black people or people of color in this fictional televised world. And because she said this would have shown the real true racism of what the 1950s were about. Because she finds it odd that Jennifer and David never asked, hey, where are all the people of color at in this world and everything? Now, David will understand why there's not, because this world is fixated on that of a 1950s sitcom. Jennifer, however, does make sense. Why doesn't she ask that question? It could be because she's so caught up in all the craziness that's going on, because she realizes that nothing burns in that world and everything, and books are blank and stuff. So she probably doesn't have time to ask that question. However, the person who wrote this article did not understand this whole metaphor of the movie. The people of color are literally the people who are turning into color and stuff. And so therefore it is okay not to have people of color in this fictional 1950 television show, because it's something you would not have seen back in the day. And if you did, they would be far, far off in the back, or they would be discriminated against. You still get that level of what black people went through in the 50s through the white people who are turning into color in this movie and stuff. So you don't need people of color to actually be in this movie, because the metaphor is supposed to be there and people are supposed to learn from that. However, people, like I've said before, are stupid. And so decades later, they don't get it. So this is why in woke Hollywood culture we have now, people literally have to hold your hand and explain to you, hey, when I'm walking home from my job and everything, a white cop is following me and harassing me, which people are tired of hearing in television shows and movies, because it comes out in the most awkward way, because Hollywood doesn't know how to write dialogue anymore. So when you hear stuff like that in the most awkward pause moment, because it's literally a pause moment, it's supposed to make you stop and think of what people are going through, but they don't write it genuine so people can understand. But they have to spell it out for people, because movies like this and Star Trek, people don't understand that they're supposed to learn from what they watch and stuff. Because we are still seeing that in today's world. Like, there's one particular party that is predominantly white, politically that is, and they are like banning black books. they are erasing certain things in school to rewrite history so that their white ancestors and stuff don't look bad. It is literally white guilt and everything. And it is a shame that this is being allowed to happen in America and stuff. Like, for the fact that black books and black creators are not being taught in school is just ridiculous, all because they feel guilty at how some of their people act today and how their ancestor acted long time ago. And to rewrite history is just appalling. And the fact that this is allowed to happen with certain politicians making this happen is just disgusting and everything. It's like, it happened. Try to live in a better world, but they don't want to, because now we're starting to see with a lot of politicians, it's all about race and everything. Like, it's always about, oh, this person isn't really black, or this person is pretending to be this race so they can get your vote. Why are we hearing about this in politics? This never used to happen and stuff. So movies like this are supposed to teach people better. I mean, when I was reading the comments about like this movie on YouTube, every single last one of them are positive, except for that one lonely person, that one lone wolf who just comes in and just wants to like say the most hateful thing ever, because the person's talking about, oh, I lived in the 1950s and it was pleasant, but now the media is like blah, 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 and brainwashing people and blah, 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 blah. And it's just like, here's this old hick of a person still living in like the old days and trying to hold on to hatred and stuff. It reminds me of the 2024 Summer Olympics that just happened, which is one of the most controversial Olympics ever. I love myself some Olympics, you know what I'm saying? I love watching the Olympics. And when I'm watching on YouTube, because I didn't feel like watching it on TV and stuff, because a lot of the sports aren't even shown on TV. You have to watch it online. There were so many hateful comments towards that one boxing lady, because they assume she is a man, but she's a biological female. Why she has an XY chromosome? Heck if I know. But she is legitimately a female and stuff. Then here comes some of these celebrities bullying her. Now she's suing them and everything. Jordan Childs with the whole bronze medal Romanian like drama that's going on. You know, it's so sad and depressing. And all you read are these hateful comments from Romania towards Jordan Childs. And I'm just like, oh, wow. So when something happens you don't like with a person of color, here comes the hateful comments and the racist comments and stuff. And it's just so irritating and frustrating knowing that this is still going on in today's world. So this is a really, really fascinating movie that was ahead of its time. I wish certain little things would have been explained, because, you know, sometimes you can't always think outside the box. And when it comes to certain character development, you know, you don't really know what's really going on and thinking, because, like, you know, but other than that, this is one of those movies that is just like a cult classic, you know? And I can't find it on no free streaming site, which is odd, because this came back in 98. Now, it is on YouTube for free, and I think it's on other streaming sites, but you have to pay and stuff. Alrighty, well, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.